Federalism will be our credo.
What is it you're waiting for? Do you even know anymore?
These are people who work hard but no longer have a voice. I am your voice.
Disconnected.
Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new live stream. Make sure you guys hit that like button down below, guys. Let's get to 100. You guys know the drill. Everybody, make sure you guys get in here. Make sure you like the stream. Hit the bell, subscribe if you're new, or if you haven't hit the bell yet, to make sure you guys never miss another video or stream. We're going to be getting to a lot tonight, and I'm sure these super chats are going to handle a good chunk of it. I don't want to do this giant monologue. There's not that many topics to cover in depth, but I know the people are going to want to talk about a lot of things. So you guys know the drill with the super chats, the $ function in chat. You can send them in. You can make sure that I will read any chat that you guys have. And when we hit our goal, we can look in regular chat at the other chats as well. So make sure you guys send any super chats, any questions you have. The goal this stream is just going to be 30 super chats. I think we can hit it. Let's make sure we do. Regardless, like the stream, let's get to 100. And we're going to be talking about some of the things that are going on with the administration. Donald Trump's approval rating. There seems to be some coordinated attempt to kind of demoralize the Trump base with a lot of these approval polls. And some people say it's legitimate. Trump is just completely collapsing in the polling. And then other people are saying that no, Trump is doing just fine. And I happen to be in the latter category, not just because I want to be, which I do, but because that's what the data is showing. And we're going to get to some of the data as well. 2026, we might talk a little bit about the recent Trump endorsement in Arizona, which we covered in the video yesterday. Didn't do a video today, but we're doing the live stream now. So there's a lot of stuff we're going to mix in, but we're 30 likes away, guys. You know the drill. Hit that like button. The face cam's not going to come on until we hit 100 likes. That's the way these things go. I know it's a late stream. A lot of people are probably going to watch a lot of it on replay, and that's fine too. So if you want to get your super chats in now, feel free. If you're going to be watching on replay, you can hear the answers on replay, because we'll get to that after the first main segment. But make sure you guys hit that like button. And there's a lot of stuff going on. You got judges trying to obstruct Trump. You've got all sorts of things going on. You've got these, there's this whole news about the economy. They're saying Trump's destroying the markets. Well, that was 40K again, but there's questions. Will that continue? What's going on with the trade stuff with China? What's going on with Russia and Ukraine? Is Donald Trump going to negotiate an end to the war? He really wants to. Now he's playing hardball. There are plenty of things that are happening. There are plenty of things that could be affecting a possible upswing in the approval rating as well. But you guys, we're 10 or we're 8 likes away, so make sure you guys like the stream. And we'll get into the important stuff when we get to 100. So we're 7 away. You guys know the drill. We'll get there. But welcome everybody. And if you have any questions for me, like I said, you guys can send them in via super chat. When we hit our goal, I'll read regular chat when we're done. We'll look in the regular chat for those who are not so fortunate to join the super chat train, but that's okay. We love everybody who's tuning in, but we're going to get started here in just a second. We're 1 like away, guys. We're 1 like away. So hit that like button and let's go. We got there. So already we are ready to go. We're here. And Donald Trump's approval rating, they're saying it's going down. They say it's falling off a cliff. They're saying his presidency is in trouble. Is that the case? Well, let's talk about it because I think it's important. It's important to understand the context because people will compare it to first-term presidents in the past who had reasons for honeymoon periods in their first term. And it's like, this is not 1981. This is not 1993. This is not even 2009. We're a hyper-polarized environment. Donald Trump is somebody that when he was elected, either time his favorables were not in the green. Now, they were much higher the second time, and they went above water after his second election, and now they've slipped a tiny bit in the polling. Could it be a response bias, as we talked about before the election? I think in some of the polls it is. I'm not going to deny it, but still, is there some regression to the mean? Yes. Could it come back easily? Absolutely. And that's kind of the main takeaway here because, yeah, the markets are a little bit shaky right now, in part because of the tariffs, but there's plenty of other factors that are going on. The economy it's been in some sort of quasi-recession for years. Everybody with half a brain knows it. Everybody that's been paying attention knows it. Why are the economy polls down? As Democrats now can be honest with themselves that the economy is in the gutter. It's not doing all that well. Donald Trump overnight is not going to be able to fix every single problem. I warned people this before the election. I'd be dishonest if I didn't say it right now. You are not even 100 days in. It is true that there are things that have happened that have been positive. Gas prices have been lowered. Inflation's going down. Fast food prices have been going down. We talked a lot about this. Chipotle was through the roof. In-N-Out was through the roof. These little things that add up for a lot of people were through the roof. And, the Trump campaign didn't touch base on like that too much. But whenever I would post about the Chipotle menu, the same menu from the same Chipotle in 2019 compared to now, and the prices were insane. And now it seems like In-N-Out's lowering prices. Taco Bell's announcing all these deals that are going on. It sounds frivolous to some people. I'm sure it does. But it does show that there is some sort of deflation, which is good. And you could maybe say that it could extend to housing prices because it is true. We are in some sort of bizarre economic situation where we've gotten a lot of positive data over the past couple of years, but it didn't match up with reality. And now reality is here. President Trump is here. And of course, the tariffs in the markets, they're going to cause some panic. The rollout's been shaky. It's made a lot of people seasick per se. I understand that. I don't know if it's a smoke screen. I don't know if it's all 5D chess. I'm not saying it can't be because you'll have two sides. One side will say everything Donald Trump does is 5D chess. And then you'll have another side that says, oh, you're an idiot if you think anything Trump does is 5D chess. And both sides are wrong. I'm sure there's some things Trump does to test the waters. They don't work. He corrects course and then usually gains popularity. The tariffs are a mixed bag. Could this be like a smoke screen? Could he be trying to seem unpredictable to go and negotiate? It's entirely possible. People that have read Art of the Deal or have at least read the cliff notes of Art of the Deal would understand that that's how Donald Trump tends to operate, and that's just the way things go with him. You don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with it, but it worked a lot in his first term, and it's too early to tell if it's working in his second term. But when you have too many people panicking about the economy, panicking about the approval rating, I tell you guys to just relax because it's way too early. I'm focused on the prize, the long game, 2026, and of course, you got to make sure you're getting the wins in the meantime. We've talked about deportations. The Democrats are dying on the worst hills possible. Defending, we have to shill for this guy. We have to shill for this guy who is not a citizen from El Salvador. They say Maryland. He's from Maryland. Well, he lived in Maryland. He's from El Salvador. He's got, gang-related type tattoos, is running with gang members, wearing gang attire, not even a citizen. And that's the guy we're supposed to care about. Now, we could talk about due process. Obviously, if you're an illegal alien, due process can kind of be thrown out the window. You remove somebody who enters illegally. But it's like they expect us to care so much about this one guy where the process, they're removing a lot of people. It's good they're doing that. That's a promise. They're trying. I don't think the numbers are high enough, but like I've said, I'm willing to give a grace period, and the numbers will get up there eventually. But when you see the Democrats focusing on this, it's like this is the guy they're dying on the hill for. Yeah, it's kind of weird because, they didn't do the due process correctly. Well, how about the 10 million illegal aliens that came in under the past 4 years? The due process for them was breaking the law, and they get away with it. They get to enter, and we remove a lot of people. One of them might not have been removed in the right way or something, and then that's what we're supposed to be up in arms about. It's like, I understand you want to ideally have the due process hold up as much as possible, but you can't expect me to care so much about this guy when you said nothing the past 4 years about the more egregious assault on our country. This is the main takeaway. And that's true. And in terms of 2026, if Republicans get walked all over, then they do deserve to lose. Whether it's a Trump thing, not a Trump thing, you can't get walked all over on the messaging and expect any sort of victory. Because you being the nice guy is not turning your base out. It's not turning Trump's base out. Donald Trump is showing you how to win. He's showing you how to stand up to the broken system. He's showing you how to get things done. And you're just spitting in his face if you don't. And that's the main takeaway. Has the Republican Party gotten better? Absolutely. Is John Thune and Mike Johnson better than Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan? You'll have a few people in chat that probably say they're the same, but they are better. But by how much is another question. I think we could debate that. And are they good enough? So far, the answer is not quite. Can they get there? Can they deliver victories? They're going to have to. They're going to have to stay afloat, but we'll see by how much, what the metric is. Because if they're not delivering enough, it goes out the window. It's not going to matter at the end of the day, and I think everybody can agree with that. But when we're talking about Trump's approval in some of these polls, guys, it's like you have, Qantas actually released one that I agreed with the crosstabs of because they made common sense. And that's the thing. It's about, does this add up? Does this make sense? I'm not saying crosstab dive, but top line dive. If Donald Trump has a negative 20 approval rating on immigration, your poll's going in the garbage because people agree with Trump's stances on immigration. And before the election in some of these same polls, he was plus 20. You don't see a swing of 40 points in 2 months. The American public isn't full. I mean, we have a lot of people that might fit the bill of schizophrenic, but the American public is not that schizophrenic. Now, I'd understand why the economic numbers would be a little bit lower than they were a couple of months ago, because people are a little bit uncertain about the tariffs, and I understand that. And Donald Trump might have to change his approach, and he has changed his approach, and we'll continue to monitor that moving forward. But this notion that Trump's approval rating, some of these polls like Fox News, which is not a right-leaning pollster, and we covered this myth and we were proven correct about the myth before the election. It was not a, horrifically inaccurate poll in 2024, but it for much of the cycle, it wasn't that good. And now he's down minus 11. Reuters, which is awful, minus 11. If you're minus 11 in Reuters as Trump, you're probably like minus 4. And that's more in line with the aggregate, which is fair. But you don't have some of the more accurate polls from this past cycle saying you're plus 8, and some of the most inaccurate polls saying you're minus 11, and then take the minus 11s at face value. Take them at gospel and ignore the polls that were accurate because you're pompous, you're smug elitist bastards in the election mafia, as we like to call it. Now, I'll be honest. Do I think that Donald Trump's approval rating is plus 8? No, I don't right now. We're a very polarized nation, a polarized public. There's a lot of negative media coverage out there. It's going to infect people's brains, and that's why I'm here and people like me are here to push back on it. Is it going to be enough? It's going to be a lot more effective than it was in term 1 when the mainstream media still had high levels of trust. I don't know if it's going to be, to the highest extent, but Pew Research, which was relatively accurate pre-election, minus 19, garbage can. Minus 50 among Hispanics, put it in the garbage can. Negative among whites, put it in the garbage can. Like a poll like that, you don't get to take that at face value and ignore Rasmussen because you don't like what Rasmussen has to say, which again, it's tied right now, which is far more in line with reality because public opinion doesn't swing on a whim like that. And I told people this back in August, Last August, when Kamala Harris was surging, I said, guys, I understand the concern. I'm not saying take Kamala Harris lightly, but I'm saying this notion that Donald Trump is collapsing because Kamala Harris is in there instead of Biden, even though obviously Biden was weakened, but like pre-debate Biden, it never added up. And who was proven right? I was proven right. They were proven wrong. So like I said, a lot can happen. If you have an economic downturn, a recession, could it impact Trump's numbers, even if it's not his fault? Because it does seem like the tariffs, there's some, he's calling an audible on the fly, which makes sense, obviously, because some of the tariff numbers were a little bit unsustainable. I agree with the tariffs. I agree with the methodology, maybe not the methodology, but I agree with the motivation behind the tariffs because it's true. Excuse me, a quick water break there, because it is 100% true that when you have, this industry that's been completely just stolen from our nation, and a lot of it didn't need to be. It's true. Some of these jobs are going to other nations that are first world nations, like Japan, like South Korea, like the EU, like Canada, that we should have here. We should have companies investing more here. Obviously, we want more investment. The loss of manufacturing of certain things that we could manufacture here and have not manufactured here has hollowed out towns in the Rust Belt. It's true, industries can change, but major companies are not investing here. Now, some of the tariffs, like 145% on China, yeah, I understand that might be, if it's a blanket tariff, I understand there's going to be some pushback on that. I know that Donald Trump is trying to get them to come to the table. But there will be some short-term economic fallout, could impact his approval rating. It does seem like he's trying to get them to come to the table, make a deal. The White House has said that they have like 22 trade deals on the table. So we'll really have to see what happens on that front. But still, in the aggregate, he's at 46%, and we're told he's screwed. You know what President Obama and his approval rating was in his second term as president in the aggregate for the year 2013, which would be the same time, relatively speaking, from Trump's second term. You could talk about, it's non-contiguous. I don't care. That's not the point. It was 46.1 on the nose. So and the disapproval rating was higher, by the way. So when it comes down to Obama, nobody was saying the world's on fire, da-da-da-da-da. But now when it comes to Donald Trump, people on the left and agitators on the right are both doing the same exact thing. Now, could there be changes that need to be made? Yeah, of course, you're going to have to do that in every single administration. Donald Trump is going to have to do that for sure. There are things I'd like to see. What's the end game for the tariffs? We still don't know what that's going to look like. What exactly are we going to have to do to get more deportations? Because those numbers need to go up. What about, even something like energy, more drilling? Trump promised more drilling. It's not an issue as many people in here probably care about, but I would like to see more, and I think eventually we can get there. You can't do everything in one day if you are Donald Trump or if you're any president to ever govern in this country. It's true. But still, the end goal is what we have our, eyes are on the prize. It's 2026, 2028. And in the meantime, obviously getting things done for the American people. But it's not going to happen overnight. People can't rely on the world to change by the actions of one man, especially when you have judges, so-called judges, by the way, that are actively trying to squash his agenda. And people can sit here and say, well, you should have known about that. And it's like, we did know. I've said it for a long time. I said it before the election. If he wins, there's going to be roadblocks. There's going to be obstacles. I fully understand that. You're not going to have Trump, wave a magic wand and fix every problem in 30 minutes. I would like him to do that, by the way. Don't get me wrong. I'd love for him to do that. I'm sure he would love to do that. His intentions are good, but you have a lot of these people that will stifle his agenda at every single turn, and it takes a while to adjust and regroup and to find a loophole. We saw that with Trump in term one with the wall in Congress. He declared the national emergency. What is he going to do about these judges? That's a whole nother discussion. But the bottom line is I see a lot of these posts And they're like, oh, Trump's approval's low. And it's like job approval at 100-day mark. If you look at Obama's second term, he was roughly in line with Trump, first of all. Second of all, this is one poll. Third of all, he's kind of been left with a big mess. And you could say, well, Obama was too. But the bottom line is polarization is kicked in, 62% approval. I mean, even so, you saw what those midterms ended up looking like at the end of the day, to the point where it's like you can't even use that as kind of like a benchmark for what it's going to look like in 2026. And that's the main point that I have regarding these upcoming midterms is that, it's not going to be a red wave probably, but will Republicans hold the Senate? Yes, almost certainly. Will they have a shot to hold the House? Yeah, doesn't mean they're going to do it. I think they could lose the House, but they're going to have a fighting chance. There's no blue wave. Even if there's a shift in the popular vote by 5-7 points, you're not seeing a blue wave. They'll have a modest majority. We don't want them to have any majority. We're going to fight to make sure that doesn't happen. But still, this notion they're going to start taking seats that went for Trump by 18 points like the DCCC thinks they're going to do, they got to be out of their minds. And I encourage them to remain out of their minds. They're run by crazy people. And for all this talk about Trump's approval being higher than it was at any point in his first term, by the way, except for a few days in 2020 because of the COVID rally around the flag effect before Trump criticized the establishment on it and was proven vindicated. Yeah, his approval rating is doing just fine. It's true. It's early. You've had some shaky weeks, and it's still doing just fine. Shaky weeks in terms of the media perception, obviously, is what we're trying to get at here. But he's still coasting. He's doing fine. There's no, massive, he's in the gutter type of moment type of thing. There's no Afghanistan moment. Oh, he's negative. He's always been negative. It's just how it works. It's the way the public is. It's the way polling in part goes. And what do these people expect? They're saying, oh, he's completely collapsing because Donald Trump decides to sell merchandise to troll liberals, which is something he's always done, including a Gulf of America hat, which, by the way, it is catching on. I don't think anybody's going to realistically get away with changing it at this point. What, you're going to be the next president and change it to Gulf of Mexico? Like, are you serious? Like, you think that's going to be a win? It's going to make you look ridiculous. It looks better. Initially, I didn't even know how it would even work, but it looks better on a map. It's more aesthetic. I like the Gulf of America thing. It is majority coastline in our country. If you want to say the Mexican part, they could call it Gulf of Mexico, like by Cancun, whatever, but it's North America. Gulf of America makes sense. Makes a lot of sense to me. But also the Trump 2028 hat. You have people that are like, oh, well, Donald Trump wants to run again. I mean, I don't think he wants to run again. I think he likes trolling people. I think he likes messing with people. The guy is going to be 82 years old next election cycle. I would love to see Donald Trump go out there and win another election. They're always fun. I get it. I'm not afraid of a hypothetical Trump v. Obama matchup, but the problem is Trump is too old, and I've looked into the 22nd Amendment a lot, and I don't see a workaround. He would have to resign before January 20th of 2023 and let Vance take the reins for 2 years and then run again. He could win a third term that way, but it would be a fragmented second term, and I don't really think he wants to do that. If he was younger, I would get it 100% of the way. If Donald Trump wanted to do that, go for it. But as things stand now, it's like, yeah, I don't think that that's something that people are really going to do anything other than waste their time thinking about on the right or the left. And obviously, if it happens and somehow it works out in 2, 3, 4 years from now, I could eat my words. I'm just saying it's not likely. But you have people freaking out. And it's like, if there's any criticism I have of this, is the font. It's like very in your face. But again, that's the point of the hat. It's to be in your face. It's to provoke people. It's to get a reaction. And it did just that. Even some people on the right, even some people that I like are like, what is this? And it's like, calm down. I understand. But it's like you're making, this is money that is going to go to Donald Trump, possibly to some PACs for 2026. If people want to buy these hats, buy the hats. I don't care. I mean, I don't really think that I'd want to spend $50 on one myself right now, but if there's an aftermarket price for one, it's like I see it and I like it. It looks better in person. Yeah, I'd buy one. But honestly, the Gulf of America one, in my opinion, is cooler. But that's just me. But the Trump 2028 idea of selling merchandise, there's also a shirt. It's funny. It provokes the left. It's like own the libs tier trolling. I don't think he's actually going to go for it to the point where people are freaking out about, oh, Trump might go for it in 2028. Oh, he's going to hurt Republicans with this merchandise sale. It's like, if your election in a midterm rested on a hat sold on a website, you don't deserve to win anyways. I'm sorry. Like, are we going to be honest here? Well, you have people that are saying he's going to hurt Republicans by doing this. If you can't overcome a hat on a website that is merchandise sale for a president that's obviously like a troll from a president that's known for doing this kind of stuff, then you don't deserve to win. I don't want to hear about it from these people because it's just a ridiculous claim that a person could possibly make to justify, losing an election because of their own incompetency, their own weakness, you name it. But that's really besides the point. It's insane that people are taking this serious is the main point of me even bringing this up. But on top of it, on top of the hats, there's this other development that people are freaking out about. And I have my own take on this, but it's like you have Donald Trump saying that he's considering, or Elon Musk kind of speaking on behalf of Donald Trump, was saying that we need a $5,000 baby bonus for mothers to increase birth rates, which again, this like natalist policy is something I support. I will say I disagree with the way that they would be going about this. Because, when Hungary give a family loan, Hungary is a country, economically speaking, it's more spread out. There's not a lot of poverty. I mean, there's not a lot of wealth there either. It's not like this very rich country. But, it's everyone's kind of just similarly there in the same boat, very relatively homogenous population in terms of the public, their culture, what they do, you name it. But it's like, I think the child tax credit should be modified, and I think that we should be incentivizing middle-class families to have kids. Now, what I don't want to do is incentivize a bunch of people to have kids that otherwise wouldn't have them that they can't afford. They have the freedom to do it. This isn't like calling for the poor people, eugenics. We support the working class, obviously. We understand that. We want working class families to thrive, and we want people to have kids, and we want them to be able to raise their kids, you name it. But the bottom line is, it's like, if you do this, you're going to incentivize a lot of people in these like lower income brackets to have a bunch of kids that they're not able to afford because it's quick money, and it's going to incentivize them to do that. And that's not going to fix like the whole population pyramid problem, even if you do raise the birth rate, because it's like the people having kids are going to be disadvantaged. On top of it, it's like we talk about like paying into Social Security, that sort of thing in regards to the birth rate. It's not exactly going to be an even distribution. And I think, there needs to be something done. Make it proportional to income, incentivize the middle class to do it. Because if you're going to have people that are getting this on welfare, it's going to be even more of a drain on the government. And that's not something that's good. If we want to talk about Doge and cutting the debt and deficit, I'm not the biggest fan of it. So I agree with the direction. I think it's directionally correct. Remember, they would use that for polling, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Polls right or a polls wrong. There's no directional correctness. You could shove that up your rear end where it belongs, along with a bunch of other BS. But, the truth is, if you want to fix the birth rates, you got to have a tough conversation. And it's not a conversation a lot of people are willing to have, even on the right, because you have a segment of the right that will do this apology for feminism, you name it. They'll do this like apology tour, diet feminism, right-wing feminism. It's true. It's a disproportionate amount of female influencers that engage in it, but I mean, there's plenty of male influencers that do the same exact thing. And it's like, if you actually want to raise the birth rates, it's a multifaceted deal that you're going to have to deal with. But feminism is a big problem, because what it's done is you have women in the workforce in high numbers, not like 1970s numbers even, high numbers. And what is that going to do? You're going to have women that are going to be leading different style of lives, and they're going to have more time that they spend working. They're not going to be getting married earlier. They're not going to be having kids. You're taking God out of the public square. People are less likely to have kids if that's what's going to happen, because you're basically saying marriage is something that's more expendable. It's something you'll do later in life. And obviously you could say the divorce laws are also playing a role. And it's a very tough situation to navigate. I'm not entirely sure what the best strategy would be to go about these things, other than telling men that, it is true. It is a two-way street. Men need to become stronger. They need to get their lives in order, man up. It's something that we can do. And that part is true. But it is also true that feminism has been a problem. And this notion that we should encourage women to just go into the workforce and motherhood takes the back seat. What do you think is exactly going to happen? I'm not saying the mom can't work a part-time job or do X, Y, and Z, but it's like the same people back in the day. And this is like 10-year-old stuff talking about this like wage gap type of thing or whatever. And it's like, why exactly is that? Because women are mothers. They're out there. They're working. They'll work, and then they'll work less hours when they have kids. You don't get to sit here and say we want more paid maternity leave and then whine about stuff like that at the other side of the conversation. You don't get to do that. So if you want to raise the birth rates, there's many things you can do, but there's many people on the left who will just never have the conversation, and plenty of people on the right as well who are just unwilling to look at basic data, basic reality, because it's not convenient for them for one reason or another. But it's true. If you want to actually, expand the birth rates, you need to bring God back in the public square. You're going to need to, lower the influence of feminism and just stand up to it and grow some balls for once in your lives. And obviously men can do better as well. It's not just blaming women like so many people, including some people on the right, will say, because it is true. Feminism is something that is a disastrous ideology. You've seen what it leads to. And if you want to roll back the clock on that, you're going to need to have at least a conversation about it that so many people are just unwilling to have for one reason or another. And it's a major problem. But, that's besides the point. I'm sure we can get into some of that later on with the super chats. But I did want to cover the 2026 update real quick as well, because you do have this, and we'll do a quick water break before, and then we'll get to super chats, because this is important too. But Donald Trump, he endorsed Karen Taylor Robson in Arizona, who was the weak rhino candidate, but he did it mainly because, who else is going to run A, and B, she donated a lot to my campaign for the endorsement in 2026. And if you're Trump, you want to win Arizona. Obviously, it's more important you win it in 2024 than worry about 2026. But at the time, I was like, I'm not a fan of this. We can get somebody better. And eventually we did get somebody better in Andy Biggs. And that was a very, very good thing that he decided to run. And not only was he running, he was actually winning a lot of these polls for the nomination. And he was winning them by a lot. These polls that came out, he was getting either him or the undecideds were 80-some%. Even though Robeson ran for statewide office 2 years prior to these polls, a little bit more than that, but just a little bit over 2 years prior. And on top of that, she had the Trump endorsement, and she was polling at 14, 16%. So, maybe she would have won more. Obviously, she still might win more than that at the end of the day. But you're talking about 80-some% out of the gate that probably know her and are either choosing Andy Biggs or are saying, no, I'll vote for another candidate. I'm still undecided. Even though Donald Trump endorsed her, even though Trump already, it was a soft endorsement. But so many people said Biggs can't win. And I ask why. And they say, well, but Kerry Lake lost. And it's like, okay, Kerry Lake is not Andy Biggs, for one. For two, Arizona is a much redder state than it was in 2022. This is not some state that, barely voted, quote unquote, voted, right, for Biden by 10,000 votes, which again, the election laws there have been trash and they're still not great. But we did pressure Hobbs into signing a bill, at least the people in Arizona did, that was somewhat, I guess you would say, election integrity-esque, verified signatures. It's not a perfect bill for sure. I mean, there's more you can do. The fact you have counts that take a week plus are a problem, but we know what happened in 2022. And even with that bill, would you even have that same result? I don't know, but now you have 200,000 more Republicans in the registrations to work with and a more competent state party. And Andy Biggs is less controversial because he knows how to, I guess, pick his battles a little bit more accordingly. He's more low-key. It's true he's very, very solid on the issues 100% of the way. But I mean, Andy Biggs is Andy Biggs. He's much better than Karen Taylor Robeson. It's not even close. You could debate if you'd prefer him or Lake or not on the surface level, on policy, whatever. We know Lake, 2 times for statewide office. She did get screwed, especially in 2022. But at the end of the day, it's like you can't run somebody 3 times in a row. It doesn't work out, especially for statewide office, whether you like her or you don't like her. You can't run her. You're going to need somebody else. She doesn't want to run. She has a position at the, Voice for America thing. So even her biggest fans have been a lot of the people that have been backing Biggs. And now it seems like Biggs is going to get that nomination. And Donald Trump endorsing Biggs now kind of levels the playing field for it. So that's kind of what we covered in the last video. It was a very good thing Trump did. He's somebody that can read the room. He knows his base didn't like her, and he knows that she's struggling in the polling. And Trump is also somebody that loves to protect his endorsement record for these primaries. And even though it's early, which I'm shocked he did it this early, but I'm very glad he did it this early, he came out and he says, I endorse both. I love Andy Biggs too, which again, it's like, does he really actually like Karen Taylor Robeson? No, this was the cop-out. He trolled her epically. It was genius. Whether people want to laugh at the notion of Donald Trump and 4D chess or whatever, this is a prime example, either intentionally or unintentionally, of Donald John America executing some 4D chess in the Arizona primary. So more power to him in that department. Big fan of the endorsement. Cannot complain. Andy Biggs will never let you down. Karen Taylor Robeson will. I know Donald Trump's not going to technically say it because he can't withdraw the endorsement, but it's clear he's more behind Andy than he is behind her, and that's the main takeaway, and I'm very happy about that. So without further ado, I think it's time to get to the people. It's time to get to the super chat. So we're not quite at the goal section yet, but we have hit 10 out of the 30. So feel free to send in super chats, guys. We have 341 people in chat. I know it's late, but make sure you guys hit the like button. Let's get up to 300. We'll see what happens. We have a lot of super chats here. Hamster Eater 96 says Trump did more to redistribute wealth from the rich boomers to Gen Z than Bernie could have ever done. I bought the dip. Well, there you go. And it is technically true. And people will say, you can't root for a recession. I'm not rooting for a recession. But you had a recession. So many people, mainly on the left, said was not a recession. Biden changed the definition of a recession. The bottom line is, would it be all that bad if a lot of people don't lose their jobs? We just have slower growth, which is really what a recession is. I would say no. If prices come down, if that's what it takes, and people are not going to be, struggling, we're going to hopefully be deporting these people. If that causes jobs to quote unquote go down, and it's from those people or from government jobs, I'm not going to complain about it. I mean, we've been spending money on these people to do what? Sit at home. A lot of them don't even go into work. And it's like, get a real job like the rest of us. Might take some time. I get it. There's been plenty of mass layoffs over the years. Just suck it up. It is what it is for those people. I don't care. It doesn't sound good politically. I get it. But it's like, I don't want the markets to fall too much. I get that. Gold's doing well. Invest in a intelligent manner. Invest in gold. All that stuff's true. But it's like, if housing prices drop, if prices in general drop, am I supposed to be mad about that? Am I really supposed to be mad about that? Assuming that a lot of people, because we don't want to see a 2008 again, but if this is a recession where people, when polled, will say we're not in a recession compared to 2024 even, based on their own personal finances, and more people are doing better for the greater good, am I supposed to say this is like a bad thing or this is the worst thing ever? I know it's not politically correct to say, well, good thing I'm not running for political office. The main takeaway is if more people see the economy as doing well, even if it's technically in a quote-unquote recession, I'm not going to sit here and shed tears about that. I mean, you have to be a crazy person to do so. Chris Creative for 5 says, realistically, where is Congress and what can Johnson do to fight these judges and make some of Trump's executive orders law and get tax cuts done? Well, Congress isn't in session, but they should be. And I don't think that's an excuse to just not do anything, for the record. In terms of the judges, Johnson, if we actually had Republicans with balls, they could just draw out district courts if they wanted to. They're not in the Constitution. They're not in there. You could do whatever you want to do with them. But will they do it, or do they not have the balls? They don't have the balls. They don't. I mean, hopefully they can be backed into a corner where they can realize, guys, we're not going to win in 26 unless we do something, at least in terms of the House. And if the House can get the ball rolling and Trump can pressure Thune, which Trump's shown a good bully pulpit in regards to Thune in the Senate so far, yeah, hopefully something could get done. Then you'll have grandstanders. You think Rand Paul's going to touch the district courts? I mean, come on. Like, he'll be like, no, I can't do anything. I can't do anything if it involves government doing something. It's like, how do you expect to achieve anything? Even your principles, your libertarian. I know a lot of people like Rand Paul, and there's plenty of things I agree with him on 100% of the way. But if you don't have the balls to use the power in front of you for anything, then you're useless and your ideology is useless too, and you're never going to achieve any goals at the end of the day. This isn't like, I'm not going to support spending. There's plenty of things that he won't get the ball rolling on, like mass deportations, limiting legal migration, because it's like, we don't want to use the government to do that. It's like immigration is government. Like, do these people not have a brain? They claim they know so much about principle and the inner workings of government, they can't even think clearly on the most basic measures possible. So I tell that to people that like the Pauls and the Masseys of the world. I get it. I understand these people like to be like the unicorns and stand up for a couple of things that nobody else really does. But you also have a job to do other than coming off like a grandstander. And that's my takeaway, and that's my beef with some of these people, because we want to get shit done. We elected Trump not to sit on his hands. And now that if Trump doesn't do anything, you whine. If he wants to do something, you whine because he's like doing it the wrong way. Like, I just want to get things done. I just want mass deportations. I just want the economy to boom again, even if it takes a while to get on its feet. But we got to do something about it. We got to do something, because these judges, it's like, where were these Republican judges when Biden was in office? I mean, you had a couple that would, here and there block something. But consistently, I mean, the Supreme Court had like one stretch of a month where they were absolutely crushing it back in 2023. And what have they done since then, or what were they doing before then? Absolutely nothing of note. You're 6-3 court, everybody. You're 6-3 court. It's like, get it together. The left is united behind opposing everything Trump does. The right needs to do the opposite. They're going to call you a cultist party anyway. They're going to call you every name in the book either way. Trump can't use power. They're going to call him a dictator or a fascist. They're going to do that anyways. He could abolish the government. They're going to call him fascist. They call Doge fascist. Doge is to, cut the costs. If there's any criticism, they're not doing enough of it. I get that part of it too. But that's not the point. That's not the point. The libertarians, and not all of them, some of them understand the means to the end. But a lot of these people, they don't quite get it. They don't quite get it. You could have a debate about certain foreign policy measures or whatever. I understand that. But this is not about that. This is about execution. Just basic execution of your agenda. And if you can't do that, you're morally executing the people that vote for you in a bad way. And that's not something you want to do if you're running for office or just as a politician in general. It's not. It's not good. It's not healthy. I've never seen any party in any serious country that's going to do this to their own base but the Republican Party in the U.S. And if they don't hold the House, this is why. It's not Trump, and it's not the tariffs, and it's not Ukraine or anything you losers and clowns happen to blame it on. It's because of you. It's on your shoulders. It really is. Trump, it's like he's in the mix, but there's a lot you can do to advance the wildly popular elements of his agenda, to set the narrative, to stand up to the left, and you choose not to do it. And that's shameful, and you should be ashamed of yourselves, and you should be embarrassed, because it is embarrassing. I've never seen anything as embarrassing as something like this ever. Chris Creative says Clooney is pushing Westmore from Maryland. Dems might run AOC and Bernie or Shapiro. Republicans need better messaging. It's how inept they are. Well, how good of messaging do you need to beat some of these people? Now, Westmore, I think, is intriguing. I don't think he's like this electoral titan, but he's intriguing. He's generic. Now, AOC and Bernie, well, Bernie's old. He's doing this tour to pass the torch. AOC, I think, is going to run, as ridiculous as it sounds. And she will get destroyed. She'll be lucky to win a state like Connecticut, even if the economy's meh, because that's the type of candidate she is. She's awful. She's atrocious. If you want all the trends against Republicans or all the trends against the Democrats to accelerate and the trends against Republicans to reverse, put up AOC and see what the hell happens, just for fun. Like, do it. I dare them to do that. Now, Shapiro, a little bit iffy. I think he's overrated, but I don't think he's the worst person that they could run either. I do think that depending on the state of the economy, Vance would probably be favored, but by how much is, you could debate that. We'll see. We'll even see what happens to him in 2026. I think he's going to win, but the question is by how much is he going to win by? Because that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, it is ridiculous. But messaging does matter. Because you have a gold mine in front of you. Donald Trump gets it. All they did was yell and whine and bitch and moan about Trump during every election he ran in and won. And what are they doing now? I mean, they're just sitting there quiet and silent and sheepish. And it's like, yeah, at that point, you're playing to lose. I'm not telling people not to vote. I want people to vote because it's important. Even the weakest Republicans are better than the best, strongest or Democrats in terms of their support for Trump's agenda. Yeah. Some people don't agree with that. I think it's short-sighted. I think it's impulsive thinking. I tell those people to vote anyways. But it's like, I could understand why people feel disillusioned if that's the way that they're going to operate, which they don't have to operate this way. They don't. So Alex Sirico says, who's the worst candidate Dems could realistically nominate? Well, if they even let AOC get the nomination, it would be her. I mean, if they run Kamala again, which I don't think that they will because I think she'll go for governor of California, even that would be, I mean, her then would probably be even worse than her now because the more she gets in front of the public eye, the worse she's viewed. I am Battlefield for 10. Says, I'm nervous. MAGA seems to be splitting all over on Twitter, and Congress hasn't done anything. We need to stay united. Cash and Pam haven't done anything in releasing files. Well, you could talk about Pam Bondi all you want. You could talk about staying united. I don't think, and Congress, by the way, you're valid on that point, but Twitter is not a good benchmark for anything. Twitter, if that's what you're basing this on, I'd encourage you to get outside a little bit more, which I'm not saying that you're at fault for it, but there's a lot of people that will, come in here and say, X is the be all and end all. And it's like certain factions of X, if you ask them what percentage of the Republican Party are these people, you would think they're much, 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 much higher than they really are in reality, which again, I don't think there's really a base divide in the real world. I think that if there is any downturn in Trump's approval, I think it's the tariff hysteria, which again, I agree that the rollout could maybe have been done more smoothly. Maybe it was intentionally done in this fashion. Either way, it is impacting his approval rating. I'm not going to try to say it's not because it probably is. even in the beneficial polls to Donald Trump and the accurate polls he's dropped, he hasn't dropped 30 points like some of these other polls have shown, but maybe a few points here and there. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense why that would be the case. Doesn't mean that people regret their votes. Doesn't mean that it's impacting votes for 2026. Turnout might be an issue, though, which, I mean, that was already going to be an issue. Alex Sorico says, could Colorado get closer or flip in 28 due to favorable Hispanic trends? I don't think that that's going to save you in Colorado. I don't. There's not enough Hispanics to save you. They're still going to be voting more Democrat anyways. And the whites in Colorado are increasingly becoming very liberal because a lot of Californians have moved in. So, yeah, I get it. Giblet for 10 says, how is Trump going to deport illegals if you have to give every one of them a lengthy due process period? All these injunctions and the unpredictable, slow Supreme Court is going to hurt Trump's term. Yeah, I think a lot of these people, if you don't have papers, you're detained. If you can't provide the papers in a given time, get out. I don't care how the process works. Get it done. Tom Homan shows up at my door tomorrow, I'd be more than happy to see the guy. Oh, you want to see my papers? You want to see my driver's license? You want to see my birth certificate? You want to see whatever? Then I'll show it. You know, I have nothing to hide. If you're an illegal alien, you might have a lot to hide. If you're a legal citizen, obviously, or you're not here illegally, you could talk about the due process type of thing having some sort of impact. But regardless, it's like you have to allow these people to do their jobs. There might be a mistake. There's always going to be a mistake. How about the mistake of how many people that we've let into our country over the past 5 years, if not even the past 25 years? And you want to sit here and expect me to sit here and sympathize with this guy who's got these MS-13 style tattoos, runs with their members, allegedly has domestic violence in his history. Like, this guy doesn't seem very bueno to me. You can send him wherever the hell he needs to go. If he's here legally and he's not a part of MS-13 and it's all a coincidence. But the bottom line is if you have this guy, he's not a U.S. citizen, it's a very big gray area. And it's like, yeah, if he's a citizen of El Salvador and not a citizen of the U.S., he's Bukele's problem. More so than he's the United States' problem. And that's the way we should be viewing this, not from the lens of, oh, we need to be walked over because there might be one person here, when how many people have we let in the wrong way? Even if we let one person out the wrong way, that doesn't justify the millions that have entered the wrong way. You're talking about a very slim portion of them that are still probably a part of these gangs anyways, to begin with. So it's faux outrage. We can't let people lose their common sense because they get pressured by the dumbest people that are walking the face of the earth in this country, that have ran this country into the ground. We're supposed to listen to these people on matters like this. Get out of here, guys. I mean, I'm not saying anyone in chat is saying that. I'm just saying realistically, yeah, you got to have some sort of due process, but it's like you have these people that have entered. Main priority, get them out. They can wait in Mexico or El Salvador or Honduras for their court dates. They could appear virtually. You can coordinate it. That's fine. You know what? Everybody cares about these little things. I want to get things done. Okay, get things done. Where's the grit? Where's this willingness to just implement the agenda that matters? They're going to call you a dictator. No matter what you do, they're going to call you a dictator. They're going to call you a fascist. They're going to call you anything. The worst thing you could do is let them call you these names, but not execute on your agenda that's common sense and popular. That's the worst thing that beta Republicans, lowercase c conservatives can do. And I've seen it so many times. I Am Battlefields' thoughts on the North Carolina Supreme Court race. Hopefully they could redo it. I don't know what the deal is with that. But it seems very similar to the congressional race they had there back in 2019 or 2018, where they had to call the special election because Republicans committed some sort of shenanigans, and they won the special election anyways. But it's like, these were alleged shenanigans on the Republican side. This is the reverse. Yeah, do it. You got to hold the same standard. It was a very close race. This wasn't, 2% of the state. This was like 20 votes that separated these two candidates. Ironically, the quote-unquote winner of the election's last name was Riggs. Very funny, but still, it's kind of poetic in that department. Andrew M says, when will you be releasing your Canada prediction? I have no plans on, well, maybe I'll do a video on it on Sunday. I'm not going to be going live on Sunday because I'll just be going live on Monday, so it's kind of redundant to do back-to-back. But we'll go live on Monday for the Canadian election. Dova Budgie 100 says, I'm sick of Dem governors in Pennsylvania. Why not vote red? Well, you got to get people voting, period. The average person is not as political as us. I wish they were to an extent, but at the end of the day, we're a very hyperactive group, and most hyperactive political people tend to be on the left. These are midterm elections. They'll get higher turnout than your specials. They're not going to get higher turnout than your presidential. It's the way it goes. Ideally, we can get the highest turnout on our side that we can get, but you never know. You never know. Literally, God says Blake Masters for Secretary of State. I'd rather he replace, what's his face, Andy Biggs, because he's going to need a solid replacement, and I think he would do a great job. So American Nerd 1776 says people who say Andy Biggs is a bad candidate or compare him to Matt Gaetz or MTG are probably boomers who haven't voted Republican since McCain 08, or they're just like stupid internet people. Because I don't understand how they can say this. The guy is mild-mannered. He's very conservative, but this, the same people you had the DeSimps, the very pro-DeSantis people, they said, oh, DeSantis, Florida, he transformed Florida. It was a swing state when he took over. Now it's a red state. They'll give him all the credit. They'll give Trump none of the credit. They don't understand nuance because they're blinded by their TDS. But they're like, oh, he's a Tea Party or Freedom Caucus guy. It's like, well, so is DeSantis. And you were fine with him. Maybe they weren't in the primary. Maybe it's revisionist history or they just didn't pay attention. But it's like you're okay with DeSantis, but not Andy Biggs. Why exactly is that? Because this whole like DeSantis 2024 thing was like in part an electabro psyop. And it's like he was never the more electable. I mean, Trump was always the more electable candidate to basically everybody. Despite all the obstacles he had to overcome, he was still the more electable candidate. You could talk about revisionist history. Oh, what happens if the Biden debate doesn't happen? What happens if X, Y, and Z didn't happen? Trump was always the choice to go with, and he won a convincing victory that nobody on the DeSantis or Haley side could have predicted by that magnitude for their respective candidate before then. And now the same people, and they'll team up with the left to do this because they're sick people, will use it to delegitimize Donald Trump's victory. And I think it's a very sad thing, but it's the way it is, guys. It's the way it is. Sean Cole for 10 says, I enjoyed the live stream with Depressed Ginger. Well, I did too, and maybe we'll do it again sometime in the future, but it was a good stream. American Nerd 1776 says, heard that Tuberville told donors he's running for governor. As an Alabama resident and Auburn fan, I'd love him to be governor. He'd be a massive upgrade over Ivey. I'll miss him in the Senate, though. Yeah, it's, in my opinion, a mistake. Because it's like, okay, this guy is in national politics. He's very solid. He's very solid when it comes to foreign policy. He's one of, like, the warriors in the Senate. And maybe you could find another one. I'm not saying you can't. But it's like for him to go from senator to governor is kind of a downgrade based on where his skill set is. I could put up with a Kay Ivey and the governorship. Maybe it's easier to say for me because I wasn't there during COVID and she wasn't ideal during that time period, which I understand. But I could put up with a weaker governor than somebody who's like a weak senator, because the weak senator on like the nationalistic issues is going to really cause a lot of problems. We don't want that sort of thing, because what it's going to do is you're weakening the Senate to maybe give a very red state better leadership that they possibly could get anyways, given the fact that it's an open primary. I don't know what he's thinking. Maybe he's just, teasing it among donors. We'll see what happens, but I think it'd be a big mistake. And I like Tommy Tuberville a lot. I met the guy once, actually, very briefly. But, yeah, it would be sad to miss him in the Senate. Mr. Sun Lifer 2 says, remember Crazy Lickman, his meltdowns were great. They were phenomenal. I've never seen a guy break down like that, especially a grown man, so-called respected professor, Nostradamus turned Nostradamus, was right about everything, so he claimed, even though he wasn't, then was wrong about everything. So yeah, the guy's a clown. It was hilarious to see him get humbled, and the way he dug the hole with Chunk Yogurt getting owned by Shank in a very rare shining moment for Shank. It was not exactly his year, and he should have just seen the writing on the wall. Like, according to his own keys, Trump was going to win. So he twists the keys. How's he going to deal with it now? It'd be easy. I could tell him how to do it. I don't want to tell him how to do it because I don't want to give him any ideas because people are just going to eat up this slop. But it is what it is. Sam Madsen says, by how much did the electorate that showed up in Wisconsin vote for Harris, you think? I saw a poll, not a poll. It does align with the poll we conducted, which was like the Harris plus, upper single digits electorate. It was like +6 to +8. And the map that I saw somebody from X put out showed that it was a Harris +7 to 8 electorate. So it wasn't like you had a lot of crossover, and the crossover came from independents. And a lot of the spending that was in the race that was efficient and effective spending, because the Musk dump didn't do much because it was too late. If he did it earlier on, it would have been a different race. He could have set the tone. This whole Musk is trying to buy the seat thing wouldn't have worked. It did backfire, but it would have, the margin for the superintendent race was far more in line with the electorate for people that showed up in the Trump v. Harris. So I would caution people to not read too much into that. It wasn't like, it wasn't exactly the worst thing in the world when you talk about defections. But it is true, especially in the Rust Belt, the turnout dynamics are not favoring Republicans in this era because of propensity, and they're going to have to figure it out. They do a better job in Iowa and Ohio for some reason, but not in the 3 Rust Belt states that make more of an impact. They're going to need to get that under control at least somewhat if they want to compete in 2026, and I think they could. 2022, Ron Johnson won. You won another statewide office or 2 in Wisconsin. All that stuff is true, but you're going to need to do a little bit better moving forward, especially because you're going to have the left supercharged. The guy that Brad Schimmel ran for the conservative side of that race in the Supreme Court in Wisconsin, he actually got more votes than Janet Protasiewicz by like 40-some thousand, who ran in 2023. The problem is you had far more votes on the opposition on the left. That's a problem. We're going to have to mitigate that, and our energy needs to get up there. And if Republicans aren't giving people a reason to vote, that's going to be another problem. So we're going to be probably talking about that a lot over the next year and apply this pressure on Congress to actually act, or Republicans are, they're not going to win their majority. I want them to. I tell people to vote even if they, think it's pointless or whatever, because it's not. And like I said, any possible realistic upgrade anywhere, no matter how minuscule, is still going to be an upgrade. You're going to want to take it. The opposition is far worse, but I understand why people aren't showing up for some of these things because of the fact that they're feeling like they're not getting a lot out of it, especially these independent voters who, still don't see a difference between the parties for one reason or another. And obviously there's less true independence than there were in the past, but it's the way it is. I am Battlefield for 20 says, who do you want the next pope to be? For me, it's Cardinal Sarah. Also, thoughts on Hegseth's second signal BS. Where was this level of concern when Biden did the horrible withdrawal and caused the death of 13 soldiers? Well, I'm right with you on the second one, but when it comes down to it, the first one didn't have to do with Hegseth. They put all the blame on Hegseth, not on Waltz, who's the more neocon type of figure in the administration, who's the guy that let the journalist into the chat, which again, Signal is technically encrypted, whatever, but he let the guy into the chat. Not a good move. Trump meets with the guy today as well. I don't know what he's doing that for. It's like an interview, but it's like, be careful. I know he doesn't have to worry about re-election himself, but it is true that like the Woodward stuff did a little bit of damage back in the day. ahead of 2020. You got to be careful. This guy's a scumbag. Trump knows he's a scumbag. He's manufactured hoaxes. He did it in 2020. He did it in 2024. It failed miserably because it was out of desperation. So he's got to really be careful. Based on the Atlantic, these are not people you want to associate with over there. But it's like, yeah, I don't know. As for the next pope, yeah, I mean, you're going to need somebody who, again, is going to actually draw people into the church. And people will say, and I got some heat for it when I said that, if this guy's the next pope, I'd consider converting, which is, it's kind of in jest, but kind of true. It's something I've considered for a while, for sure. Something that I'm still weighing, because, again, similar faith, but not exactly the same. And you have this guy who was the pope before, rest in peace. I'm not going to, say anything disrespectful. I see a lot of conservatives doing it. I think it's just the wrong thing to do. A lot of people care about this guy, and he's gone. Rest in peace. But he turned people off because he was very liberal on certain things, like migration, had some stances, and they weren't necessarily, aligning with many other cardinals or people that typically interpret the Bible when it comes down to things like this. And the next pope has to be more conservative, and also just bring people into the church is another thing. If you want people to, join the faith, you're going to need a good salesman. Obviously, you could say that somebody shouldn't join a faith because of the leader. I agree with that. But again, it's going to take people to persuade people to join something. If they're on the fence, then maybe that would be somebody that would be like, okay, maybe I'll be more inclined to support this. If you have somebody that people are going to resonate with, like Cardinal Sarah, however you pronounce his name, who actually gets it. He said that mass migration will be the death of the West, and it's largely true. He fully understands it. He fully gets the problems compared to somebody like the previous pope, who was very liberal when it came to open borders, came to immigration, you name it. You could say maybe he didn't know all the facts of the matter. And there are many things he said that were taken out of context by the media. I mean, don't get me wrong about that. I mean, you had plenty of people that would, perpetuate these stories that the old pope said this about like gay marriage or something. And it turns out you look in the fine print and wait, that's not actually what he said. So it's a little bit of a gray area, but either way, I think you're going to need a person that can bring people into the faith if you want to unite the church overall, if you want to grow and unite the faith and make it stronger, which would make it, more capable to take on the rising tide of secularism and Islam head on. Well, you're going to need a stronger leader of the faith to do it, and the Pope of any denomination is probably the most power. I think most people would agree with that, so I think you're going to need somebody that is a lot more conservative. And I know not everybody was going to agree with everything I say about religion, and that's fine. I mean, a lot of people that will spend the rest of the stream, I'm sure, bickering with each other about what's the true faith in the comments. But regardless, it is true that, if you have a good salesman, if you have somebody that can be that figure and inspire people, they're going to most likely be more inclined to join the faith. I'm not saying you should join a faith because of one person. You should join it because you actually believe it. That's 100% true. But if you have one person that's able to kind of tip the scale a little bit, then that's good, in my opinion. That's good. So, hopefully they go down that route. Now, honestly, I don't think he's going to get the nod, sadly, because he's old. I mean, he's 79. I know he still technically can. He's like maybe in the top 10 in the running from what I can understand. But a lot of people will prop him up because, yeah, he's very solid. But at the end of the day, I don't think he's going to get the nod. I really hate to say it. I'd love for him to get the nod. If he was younger, he'd stand a much, much better shot. It is true that most of the conclave is a little bit more conservative leaning, which is technically good. So I don't think they're going to get somebody that's like atrociously liberal, but you never know. You never know. But we'll see what happens, guys. American Nerd 1776 says, thoughts on my Congressman Barry Moore. I personally like him. I can see him as a decent replacement for Tuberville. Yeah, he'd be decent. I mean, we thought Tuberville wasn't going to be that great when he first came on the scene, and he ended up blowing a lot of people away, being a top 10 senator. So you never know. I mean, we thought that Mo Brooks was going to be the solid one to join him, and then look how that turned out. He's like Lincoln Project now, and a lot of people, including myself, weren't happy when Trump switched his endorsement, but now you look at the road he's going down, and I mean, Katie Britt is not perfect, but more solid than he's become. It's like, yeah, overall, I think Trump did the right thing in retrospect, and a lot of people can admit it, so we'll see. We'll see, but either way, we're 12 away from our goal. Again, just any super chat, $2 or above helps us get there, so if you guys want to send a super chat, feel free, so we can maybe look in the regular chat. But we'll go for another like 10 minutes or so. Go for another 10 minutes. But is what it is, guys. We have a lot of people that are just dooming, a lot of people that are just not quite getting some of the method to the madness here within the administration, but is what it is. I am Battlefield says, who do you want the GOP ticket in 28 to be? It's probably going to be Vance Rubio, whether people like Rubio or not. I think he's improved a lot. He's like the next in line, kind of, because you have Vance as VP. Rubio's like Secretary of State, probably the most recognizable, prominent secretary. He's improved drastically if you look at the record within his Secretary of State tenure. A lot of people on all wings of the right do like that. He's a peace through strength kind of guy. He's kind of been on this like MAGA, curious, more populistic bend over the past 5 years or so. And now he's putting his money where his mouth is. I wouldn't mind it. I love Vance a lot. It would have been fine if Rubio was Trump's VP. A lot of people were not happy when I said that, but I feel a little bit vindicated about that because of how well he's been. But I will say Vance, I think, was better in retrospect. So good on Trump for picking Vance, and good on Rubio for being he's a better Secretary of State than I thought, because it's like, it's Secretary of State. You know, he's kind of somebody on foreign policy that's been iffy, but he's actually done he's done a good job. So I got to give credit where it's due in that department. Giblets says Congress is terrible. Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that. I mean, sometimes you'll have good people in Congress. Sometimes they'll do some good things, but Congress as a whole, it's a broken system. It is. And when it comes down to some of these judges, and so many people are like, Trump must obey them because it's the principle. It's like, he's right when he says, if you save your country, are you really violating a law? I mean, look at what Abraham Lincoln did. That man, by definition, was a dictator, but he saved the Union. And, many people that are like on the diehard Southern LARPer side are going to say that he was a bad president because he was a dictator. It's like, they're not entirely wrong. He did a lot of things that would be considered authoritarian, but what he was able to do was save the Union moving forward, which was his end goal. Whether everybody at the time liked it or not is irrelevant. And when it comes down to Donald Trump, we're being invaded. You might not see it as such, but, founding fathers would have looked at this and said, this is an invasion of our country at the border. They would have written the Constitution differently if they could see the lay of the land now. So technically, can you bend the rules without fully breaking them and still get things done if you're Trump? Yeah, I think you can. But this whole notion of we must, have the Constitution be our religion, where you cannot deviate from it at all, when past presidents that many people see as heroes have clearly deviated from it. Yeah, that's kind of where it gets lost on me, especially because so many people, and honestly in both parties, have been compromised by this mindset that has just diluted the Constitution over the past few decades, if not even like a century at this point. So it's the way it is. Cesar Hurtado for 5 says, can Trump get out of Thomas Massey's ass? He's arguably the best congressman in the House. He's actively supporting a primary against him. And we covered this a little bit in the chat earlier. But it's a two-way street. And I understand where people are coming from when they say this guy's really solid. His voting record is solid. There's things in it that I have grievances with as well. And I'm not talking about because he disagrees with Trump. I'm talking about because it's like, oh, he votes for Speaker of the House. He doesn't vote for himself because he doesn't like Mike Johnson. If you don't like Mike Johnson, fine. I'm not the biggest Mike Johnson fan. I think we proved that he was probably the most realistic choice we could get that still would be friendly with Trump, not like another Paul Ryan or McCarthy type. But he doesn't vote for himself or another decent congressman. He votes for Tom Emmer, who's like the worst of the worst, which is strange, and then votes for all this, like, he's voted for mass immigration in the past as well. When it comes down to it, he's like the one vote. And if you're voting with the left on all this stuff in a narrow majority because, you don't like Donald Trump, you have like this vendetta against him where you won't let him get anything done, even though you voted for like a Biden spending bill in the past, it's like, either way, come on. Like, you got to play ball. You got to play to win. I get it. We want an ideal society. You're not going to get there if you're just going to grandstand like this. It is like the serious politics. I understand that he can dissent and have his own views on certain things, but if you're voting to essentially shut down the government because you're not getting the spending cuts you want, it's just going to shut down the government. Donald Trump's approval rating is going to go down to the floor. You're going to lose your mandate. Yeah, I feel like there's going to be some criticism, whether it's a primary challenge or not. We could talk about the methodology, but at this stage in the game, I can't get too mad about that from Donald Trump. I could see why people are mad, but I can't get too mad about it myself. Now, we may not agree, and that's fine. So we have these conversations. I am Battlefield for Five says, thoughts on the FBI arresting Judge Juan Cano for harboring a trend day illegal, and I feel Fetterman is becoming the next Manchin. Well, I mean, by current standards, maybe. He's still voting heavily with the Democrats. And, Manchin did as well. A lot of his stuff was a LARP, and it worked well for his reelection in West Virginia. Fetterman, could he be on his way to reelection? I think that it's not a slam dunk. I really don't think he's a slam dunk. There's plenty of people in his own party that don't like him. He could get cinemaed. At the same time, Republicans, if they're mounting a strong challenger that can highlight his fraud-esqueness at times, it's like, could they, give him a run for his money? Yeah, I think Stacey Garrity is a prime example of somebody that could do it, but I'm not entirely sure who that would be. But in terms of the FBI arresting the judge, yeah, I mean, that should happen. If you are obstructing Trump's agenda and you're harboring illegal aliens, very strange behavior for somebody that's supposedly upholding the rule of law, upholding the Constitution, as many people on the left would claim that judge was doing up to that point. So American Nerd 76 from Daily Caller, MTG is considering running for Senate should Governor Brian Kemp decline to run. May God help us. I don't think she'd win. I mean, if we're going to be honest, MTG, if she's going to be in any position, she's going to be right where she is. Because I don't think she's winning a primary. You'd probably lose her in the House. Even if you like MTG, you should tell her not to run. And I don't think she is going to win that race, especially against an incumbent. Ossoff is weak, but MTG is MTG. Very controversial. We understand how these things go. Left's going to spend a hell of a lot of money in that race. She will lose by, 7. And we don't want that to happen. Herschel Walker running again would be a better use of time and energy than having MTG run, and I mean it. And I say that as somebody who, MTG at times she'll come through and be, say something solid, and at many times she'll shill for the establishment when it's convenient for her, and she'll just have a tweet here and there that's like a boneheaded, brain-dead tweet that I don't think anybody agrees with, including the president himself. So, I want to like MTG. She's fine as a congressman. But she doesn't have what it takes to win a Senate race statewide in a swing state. That's veering to the left. I don't like Brian Kemp, but I think he does have what it takes. And if we're trying to elect the best person we can get in said state, it's like MTG's not the choice in my book. Brian Kemp would be better. Is there a hypothetical candidate that could do it that'd be more solid? Yeah, but I mean, Kemp's going to probably win the primary, go from there. We got to deal with what we can get our hands on in these states. So I'd rather have the seat than not. Cesar Hurtado says, follow up on Massey, then when in fact will we cut or limit the government? That's where I'm disillusioned with Trump. It seems like he's kicking the can. Well, I understand that notion. I think what Doge did with this, lowering the number to 150 billion was a cop out they shouldn't have done. It is true. I think you're going to have to look at, and a lot of conservatives won't like this when I say it, but you're going to have to look at getting rid of the filibuster, or at least lowering it, because what that's doing is it's requiring so many Democrats to vote for the stuff they'd never vote for. Can't get the agenda done. Now, the reason why I'd be open to doing it now is because Democrats might not ever retake the Senate for the foreseeable future. So, as things stand now, lowering the threshold to 55 might be a much, much better move than the alternative, for one. For two, I really, really think that in terms of the spending, there is going to be something done, because there, in the big package with the whole tax cuts deal, there was supposed to be something. Trump wants to get it done then. Is it going to happen? Hopefully, but it needs to be done. You at least got to cut, even 2% of the budget. You should be able to cut, given what we were finding with the Stoj and all the probes that they conducted. You should be at least able to cut around 2-3% of the budget. I do think the tax cuts could help raise revenues, as they did in the first term. People forget about that. They raised revenues. If you look at the amount of tax revenue we took in per year, it skyrocketed in 2019, especially after the tax cuts went through. So it's not like they were adding to the deficit. The problem is we spent a lot more than we should have spent. So hopefully you do get to cutting them, but it's not like these extended tax cuts for the middle class are going to balloon the deficit. But we do need to make sure that we go out there and make sure that we're able to cut as much spending as possible. And it will be a problem if they're not able to do it. But I just don't think that sabotaging every other element of the agenda and kind of throwing the presidency into chaos over it at this stage in the game is going to get the job done. If anything, Trump would be forced to compromise more so with the Democrats and the opposition, and that is something we definitely don't want him to do. So if I'm Massey, what I would do is write a budget, post it on social media, send it to Trump, try to work with Trump, butter him up a little bit if you have to, send it to Johnson, and make sure you can outline everything that you want to see happen and make sure you can get it done. Instead, I see a lot of, kind of standing in the corners and saying, no, this isn't good, which I understand why he'd have critiques of it. I'm not saying I don't get it, but there's a lot of nuance to it. I'd like to see what proposal he'd like to outline. If he can do that, and publicize it, because if he's done it, I haven't seen anything about it. Even if I haven't seen it, a lot of people haven't seen it, probably in Congress. But if he could do that, I think that we'd be better off to see where he stands and what we can do. And maybe some of the ideas will be taken into consideration. That's the way I see it. Ash K2 says both Rogers and James couldn't win Senate with Trump on the ballot. I don't have much confidence they could win a blue wave year. Also, Cooper v. Tillis. Cooper's not going to run. I think we've established, especially because the Senate Dems are promoting nickel. If they're promoting nickel, it's going to be nickel. As for James, I think James can win, because statewide office, he did outrun the top of the ticket by more in 2022 than he did in 2020, than he did in 2018. So you have a shot there because it's a governor's race. These are less polarized, could be a three-way race, solid candidate for that. As for the Senate race, it's a little bit different. I'm not saying Rogers is going to win, but you're going to face a weaker candidate. Could he win? Yeah, in a good year. We don't know if it's going to be a blue wave. I don't think it'd be a blue wave. It could be a blue year, like a reverse 2022 type of situation, but it could be close. He will start off with a lot of name recognition, a lot of support. I'm not the biggest Rogers fan, but it's like either way, clearing the field early is good. Democrats are going to be the ones having their brutal primaries well into August of 2026, and that's something that they need to focus on, and that's something that we can, capitalize on and take advantage of. So I don't have much confidence in Rogers. I think he could win. I think James, a little bit of a different story, especially if the race remains a three-way race. I am Battlefield for 10 says, I think Speaker Johnson can be a better speaker because it seems like he'd be better than Ryan, but right now Trump needs to go after Thune to pass the SAVE Act and Rogue Judges Act. Absolutely. I mean, there does need to be accountability there. The Senate, The SAVE Act is common sense. They're panicking. Oh, how dare these people need citizenship to vote or to show citizenship when they register? It's like common sense. You need that to get a driver's license in most cases, but you don't need it to register to vote. Now, I'm not saying it's going to change much, but that, and obviously the states need to implement voter ID. And if we could withhold federal funding over drunk driving, not even drunk driving, but like highway funding is what it was for, to raise the drinking age because of the whole, young people are drunk driving. Well, why can't we do it for something like this? Because I think that it's more common sense, and I'm not saying that everyone needs to agree with it, and I'm not saying I fully think it's a pressing issue, but a 19-year-old adult buying a beer is not going to be as egregious as an illegal alien voting. I don't know who in their right mind would think that you need to pressure states for one of those, but not the other one. Like, I understand why people would want it at 21. I'm not saying we need to touch that. I think it's a state-by-state basis. It's fine. I understand why 18 might be too low because, high school, it would, probably raise the access. Maybe like 19, like how they do in certain parts of Canada, would be, the common sense solution to that problem. But like this whole notion of we can't pressure California with federal funding to get their act together in their election system, you absolutely should be. It's astounding. We live in a society where the technology is supposedly the most innovative. You can't reach people. You can't talk to a person as easily as you could. You can't count the votes as easily as you could. I'm not even saying the whole thing is shenanigans or fraud, but it leaves the door open to a lot of that. In California, it's crucial because that will probably dictate the majority in the House. And if you can get that under control, I'd say Republicans have a much better shot. Like, yeah, play the game we're in, harvest our ballots. I'm not even against ballot harvesting in full, depending on what type of harvesting. If we are able to do it, we could outdo it and destroy the Democrats at their own game, and it could be helping us. And it has helped us because we started to do that in California. I'm not even against early voting, but this whole like month and a half of early voting, and then you don't count the ballots, and then all this stuff happens. It needs to be rectified. You can't be counting the ballots for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. It's not good. So there's that. We're 4 super chats away. We're 3 super chats away now. Hopefully we can get there. We're almost done with the stream. Giblet says, how are we going to pass everything if we need to capitulate to the Dems in the Senate? Well, like I said, there's going to need to be something that gets done about that. And that's why Schumer's been willing to play ball, because he doesn't want to have that conversation, especially because every Democrat said get rid of the filibuster. And if they got the majority and Kamala Harris won, that'd be the first thing they do. Now, they didn't have a path to the majority, but it would have happened. It would have been done. That's why they, bullied Sinema out of the Senate. That's why Manchin, I don't think he would have won anyways, but he retired. So, yeah, so we'll wait and see. We could look in regular chat in the meantime, but we have 3 super chats before we hit the goal. And like I predicted, you'll have people arguing about Catholicism this late into the stream, despite me answering the 1 super chat about it 20 minutes ago. And that's okay. Wouldn't be a stream that mentions religion once without people arguing 30 minutes later. It's perfectly fine. Wall Street futures are up. That's good. That's good to hear. The Filipino guy is pro-gay marriage. Well, that's not exactly what you would want in the Pope, because that would be going to the more liberal side. They'd be even more liberal than Pope Francis was, and he was like the liberal guy a lot of people would talk about, and a lot of people have even said they left the faith because of him, which I don't know if that's the main reason a person should leave their faith, is because the leader is weak. But I mean, that's how people are. I'm not saying it's how they should operate, but that's how they do operate. So you're going to need somebody that at least represents the religion and its history well, at least in the sect of it. So let's see. GDP announcement tomorrow. Rye Guy 1218 just mentioned what I was just talking about. Yeah, Southern Baptist. See, at that point, just become Orthodox, because if you're going from Catholicism to Southern Baptism or Southern Baptistry or whatever you want to call it after Catholicism, it's like, do you even have a foundation in your faith to begin with if you're doing something that's that drastic? I don't know, but I agree he shouldn't become the Pope. I know it's more of a metaphorical thing, but we're one away from the goal. I am Battlefield says, when do you think we'll see Ukraine come to the table, sign the mineral deal? Well, here's the deal. Zelensky has no incentive. He wants the war to go on because otherwise he'd have to hold an election and he'd lose. And he's not going to want to lose. We're told that he's like this stand-up guy we're supposed to like, and he's fighting the bad guys, and he's fighting autocracy, and he's fighting for the Western democracy, and you see how he operates. And I'm not saying that to defend the other side of it, because you have Putin on the other hand. He's not, obviously, I don't think he's ready to like make peace, but Zelensky has less of an incentive to. You could make the case for that because of the fact that he is not going to want to run in an election that he's probably going to lose. His approval rating might not be 2%. That's kind of an exaggeration. Trump likes to exaggerate, and that's the way he is, but is it below par for what he would need? Absolutely. It's not where you want it to be. So he doesn't have an incentive to. So what exactly are we going to do with that? I don't know. You tell me. You tell me. Someone said they're not even Catholic, but Cardinal Sarah is the man for the job. He's based. I agree 100%. He'd be a good leader. He's definitely more of like, he takes more of like a spiritual approach as well, which is kind of, I feel like it's something that gets a lot more people into their faith, as if they view it through that like lens, where they're operating under more of like a, you feel it more, if you know what I mean. It doesn't feel so mechanical. So I think that'd be another thing that would be very good, in my opinion. And yeah, I think we need to stop with all these shipments of weapons. We need to play hardball with Ukraine. But like I said, even so, Zelensky just staying in power is his end goal. He's not some perfect person either. So many people like to pretend he is just because Putin happens to be bad or something like that. Like, if you want the war to end, like, what exactly is going to be the deal here? Zelensky would be more likely to end it if he knew that he'd get reelected. And he's not that popular right now. I am Battlefield says, thoughts on France arresting Le Pen. They said she was ahead in the polls and would have beaten Macron. Well, she was ahead in the polls before and didn't. But in terms of the arrest, it's just what they did to Trump. They did it to Bolsonaro. They're doing it worldwide to right-wing populists everywhere because they see him as a threat to their own order. So much for democracy. It's not about that. It's not about principle. It's about, pushing their power and their agenda. That's the way it is. Dova Budgie 100 says, does Trump have a plan to replace Clarence Thomas? I would hope so. Problem is the recent appointments haven't been all that solid. Gorsuch has been decent, more than decent. The other two, not so much. After what Kavanaugh went through, for him to side with the opposition that framed him as a rapist and still believes he's a rapist is sad. Rye Guy 1218 says Southern Baptist was a stretch. I'm an evangelical. Well, I know what you mean, but it's like still a big theological difference. But I would assume that you would feel less like inclined to be involved with your faith in that sect. I know what you're getting at, but that's the way it is. So, anyways, guys, I think we're gonna wrap it up. It is past 1 a.m. on the East Coast. I'm very tired, but we had to get the stream done. Thanks to everyone who tuned in, everyone who donated. And I'll see you guys next in a live stream on Monday. We'll stream the Canadian election results. And Canada, we know which way it's going to go. It's going to be 3 for 3 for the left. And I'm not happy about it. And you could say it's Trump or whatever, or Trudeau being gone. It's a mix of both. But the fact that Canadians want to shoot themselves in the foot over such ridiculousness is absurd to me. We know which way it's probably going to go, but we'll monitor it when the results come in. But anyways, guys, Like the stream down below. I can't believe YouTube says, can you dab? Maybe next time. A little tired for that. But, yeah, I think I've done it before. Fine, we'll do it. All right. Not really the best. Not really the best at 1 a.m., but you got your little sound bite. You got your little clip, so congratulations. Should have asked for a larger super chat for that, but it doesn't matter. We'll wrap it up. Appreciate everyone who tuned in. Like the stream down below. Subscribe, hit the bell, do all that good stuff. I'll see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle out.